All right. I'm here with Landon Bennett, founder of a company called Userfeed that was acquired on Microacquire for six figures. So glad to have you on here, man.
Thanks for having me.
So to kick things off, tell me a little bit about you. I remember that startup coming in and I looked at it and I was like, this is sick. Do you want to maybe start off with explaining what it did, the problem it solved, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so Userfeed, it started out being a feedback tool built solely on top of Intercom's platform. We ended up our strategy ended up being kind of trying to build multiple apps on top of Intercom and using that as sort of like a its own flywheel within the Intercom ecosystem. So similar to like how people do that sort of thing on the Shopify app ecosystem, and they'll have like multiple Shopify apps, and then they have some users over here, they see the other apps you have, they start using those. And since we weren't branching out with other support platforms and like integrating with them, we decided let's just build multiple apps inside the Intercom ecosystem. So we only got to like two apps before we ended up selling the business, but that's essentially what we did. And so we had the one app that was the feedback tool built on Intercom, and then we had another app that was sort of like think sort of like SalesLoft, something like that, where it's allowing you to set up like follow-up messages, but you could do it directly within an Intercom conversation. So it was mostly geared towards support related issues. So like when
Nice.
you know that there's not a resolution to the issue, you can continue to follow up, and then if that person follows up with you, it like reopens the conversation and cancels the follow-up and all that stuff. So they don't have any of those features, so we sort of built that out specifically for Intercom customers.
Nice. The design was badass too. I remember looking at it and I was like, I'd use this. So nicely done. I love how a lot of entrepreneurs when they think of startup ideas, like one great place to start is like ecosystems, like on top of the ecos or the Intercom app store or Slack or something like that. So that's badass. Tell me about the acquisition. I want to know everything. But
Yeah.
you're free to only tell me what I know nothing. I just know you sold it. I hit you up on Twitter to hear the story. How did it go? How did you hear about Microacquire? How did the listing go? Tell me like how you negotiated with buyer. Tell me, give me the 5 minute rundown.
Yeah. So
That's like a super blanket, like that was a question that could have been broken up into like 10, but maybe just give me like the quick highlights and then we'll narrow in.
yeah, we'll do the whole story. So we actually Kyle and I, Kyle's my co-founder. We actually had two software businesses. So we have another business that we're still running right now called Ad Reform. And we've had that, like we've been doing that for about 4 years. And then Userfeed was about 2 years old at the time that we sold it. But and Userfeed actually was like born out of like a problem we had at Ad Reform in terms of gathering feedback using Intercom and that sort of thing. So that's how it originally got built. But at some point, even though Userfeed was growing and it was growing slower than our other business, which was already much larger.
Which is ad form, right?
Ad Reform. Yeah, I think at
Okay,
the time.
I'll put in a plug down. What does ad form do?
So yeah, so basically it's an ad ops automation tool. So all of these ad tech companies, agencies, all these different companies within the ad tech ecosystem, typically they all have ad operations teams, and these are the teams that are think of them as like sales operations for SaaS companies, but it's like
Yeah.
because it's ad tech related companies, they're doing all this ad serving and trafficking and QAing ads and reporting and all these things. It's like all the little tons of little tasks that they're doing all day. We basically build a number of different tools to automate, not all of those tasks, but a number of those different tasks. So it's
So it's a badass startup.
we like to think so.
I mean I'm very familiar with sales teams and building them and like the struggles and just like figuring out ways to like streamline stuff. So I like the sound of that. I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah.
But back to the acquisition.
So yeah, we decided to sell. This is in I guess December, like late November, December of 2020. So right before the beginning of the year. We basically just decided like we need to go full time on Adderform. It's already it was like a mid 6-figure business ARR, and it was a lot larger, and we just needed to focus our time on it. So
I want to pause there because that's such a good lesson for entrepreneurs. Like, so you sold a business that I'm assuming that you weren't putting full focus on, but it was a good product, and you have this like better business that has more upside, and so you decided to kind of like wind down a couple, sell a couple off to focus fully on Adderform. Is that kind of correct?
yeah, basically. I mean, basically, yeah, take some money off the table, regain some focus for Kyle and I.
So you got you got a little seed money out of acquisition.
Well,
Nice.
I'd say Adderform was seeding Userfeed for for a long time. So, but yeah, I mean, the cool thing was we basically put it up for sale in December, beginning of December, and our goal was let's try to find like money is not the number one thing here, right? Like we want to make a little bit of money, but I think the bigger thing for us was we want something that's easy and quick, and find somebody that's a good fit, basically. So we put it up. I was actually really surprised with the amount of like incoming requests that were kind of coming through. I mean, we probably had 40, just like within the first like week or so, we had like 40 people reaching out, requesting more information.
Damn.
I spent a good amount of time kind of like weeding through those just to make sure that they were legit and, not competitors and like that sort of thing. And we probably dwindled it down to about, I don't know, let's say around 20 that we were like went a little bit further with or jumped on a call with. And then from that 20, we kind of like went kind of the next step of going through a little bit more due diligence with about 10 of those. And then we ended up getting about 3 offers. And this was all within the time frame of about 2 weeks, basically.
What? I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Congrats, dude.
Yeah. So it was super, super easy in terms of just getting like raw, like traffic or leads, which I was surprised. I was honestly surprised with. But yeah, so we kind of went from there, and then we started going, we looked at the different offers, and we went back to kind of where we started with our goal of like, okay, we want something easy. We want to kind of just get as much cash up front and just be able to move on within a month or two, because like the whole goal of this was to regain focus on our other business. And
I love that. Like when I sold business apps, one of the main things I focused on was I valued terms over price.
Mm-hmm.
Like no earnout, all cash, quick transition. Those are important to me. And also focusing on like the relationship, doing due diligence on the buyer. Are they legit? It sounds like you kind of went down like a similar path. Is that accurate?
Yeah, pretty much. And I think I had reached out to you at some point. This is back when you were probably handling all the support load.
Yeah. That. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But you were helpful. You were really helpful, because I was basically like, I mean, you basically gave the advice to focus a lot more on terms than on whatever the value of the price that they give you. And you also mentioned, I think you also mentioned something about like maybe starting out with a little bit lower desired offer number so that you get more offers.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe helped us get a little bit more action on that, on the listing.
Yeah. Because if you get multiple, there's a saying, if you have one buyer, you have no buyers. So you want to draw in a bunch, and then if you're successful, you can, negotiate and raise up the price, or you have leverage on the terms and stuff like that.
Exactly. So we got of those 3 offers, a couple of them were finance based. So it was like, we'll well, one of them was like some sort of like earn out type of thing or like milestone based stuff, and that we weren't interested in that. The other one was financed over like I think I think it was like 12 months or something, which we
Yeah,
were
okay.
also not interested in. It's like
No,
we're like the whole goal is let's get the money, let's help with the transition is for 1 to 2 months, and then we're basically gone. And so the last offer was basically that, right? It was I think they paid us like half or 75% upfront, and then after that initial like month or two transition period, they paid us the rest of it. And there was no sort of like milestone other than like time, right? Is like just work with us for 2 months to transition this from a technology perspective and all the tools you're using and information about customers, all that kind of stuff.
I
And then
I love deal structures like that because I mean just from like a we bought a Shopify SaaS application and we did 50%. It was with like a bunch of friends like Sean Purry from My First Million. I don't know if you
yep,
ever followed that story, but we
yeah,
did 50% up front and then 50% after and it was just like for fun, just like hey, let's buy something. And we had like a bunch of people pulling in. But the more you can de-risk the acquisition for the buyer, because it's not like a house where here's the keys and they walk in, they just like, oh, I know everything. So just like
a
being
lot harder.
available.
Yeah,
Yeah, just even just like 2 months of just like, is it running smoothly? And so even just like that small transition period can be huge for buyers. And it
for
also
sure.
it attracts more buyers and it builds trust too, showing like yeah, this is a great company and I'm willing to, hang around for a couple months if you need me. So right,
Exactly.
right
We
on,
still, I
man.
mean, we still have a like an open Slack channel or Slack Connect or whatever they call it
Yep.
with them. So I mean, I've seen a couple times over the past. I mean, we're obviously pretty far past that now, but every once in a while they'll reach out with something. And I still keep up with the buyer a little bit, just like, hey, how are things going?
How's
How
your
are the
baby doing?
kids?
How's
Yeah,
your baby
exactly.
doing?
We both had kids like in the last like couple months, so
How
going through the same stuff.
how old are your kids?
I've got a 3-year-old daughter and a 1.5-month-old boy.
Ooh,
So
man, how you sleeping? You look great.
yeah, he's actually sleeping pretty well at night, not during the day though. So yeah, if you start hearing some cries, that's what that is.
Oh
my
man,
my wife
like
is on maternity leave, so she's definitely bearing the brunt of it at the moment.
I got a 2-year-old and maybe after this I'll send you some ebooks on my son at colic. We're getting off topic
Yeah.
here. So, oh, it was insane.
I mean, honestly, it's kind of on topic because another factor, it was a smaller factor, but the prior 12 months were just, it was the pandemic, right? We're all home. My wife and I work, my co-founder's wife works. So it was just a difficult time, like with kids and stuff. And so like you're juggling kids at home, multiple kids at home in my co-founder's case. And on top of that, like the pandemic and everything. And then you've got two SaaS businesses that you're trying to also manage and run. And it's just
yeah,
like, it's just too many things during that, that the pandemic, like, and we were just like, we gotta move on from this, from
yeah.
something.
I'm a big believer that just focus is like so key. And I love how you were just going all in on one startup instead of ones that like multiple other businesses. And I assume you love your new startup, the one that you're focusing on more.
Well, yeah, I
So
mean, we've had it for like, it's been around longer. Um, I think it's some way like I'm sort of split on that, right? Like obviously focus would help you to drive more growth in one particular thing, but it is kind of nice to have this the startup that pays the bills, right? And then you can sort of experiment like we did with Userfeed. And even though it wasn't a huge success, like we still were able to, like we had cash flow from it for multiple years, and then we just sold it for 6 figures. Like that's a pretty good outcome for,
yeah,
and
dude.
during that time frame, our other business like grew hundreds of percent. So it's like we're in a better position overall from doing it. And maybe we could have been in a even better position if we had just stayed focused on ad reform, possibly. But I do think in some ways, it helped us to, not be quite as burnt out on like one thing, right? It
like,
reinvigorated us to work on the older thing that we had.
it's like the hardest thing with entrepreneurs. It's like I'm old because I look at these startups all the time and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's an awesome startup. And it's
Yeah.
so hard for me to stay focused on microacquire and like, okay, just don't like now I only approve startups after my team. But I'd wake up in the morning and I'd see the cool like Userfeed. I remember the day Userfeed came in and I was like, this is awesome. Like I like how it's integrated into the intercom ecosystem, like the problem that it's solving. So congrats on the acquisition. 6 figures out of that. Now you have another startup that you're focusing on. If you were going to give any tips to founders that are looking to get acquired on microacquire, what would be like the main like 2 that you'd give?
First tip we kind of talked about, which is I think you need to have sort of a strategy going into it of like, what am I trying to do right now? Like what terms am I not okay with, basically? Like, where do I draw the line versus just going into it like, oh, I wonder what I'm going to get. Let's just see what happens. Like, I think,
Oh
it's
my
important to kind of
gosh.
like have that,
Yes.
like already, talk to your co-founder or whatever it is and just be like, this is what we're okay with. These are these are the terms we're not okay with. Let's go into it and just, and look for that sort of thing. And you could be upfront with people too, and like not waste your time, because there's going to be a lot of like people reaching out, requesting info. It's like, I don't want to waste my time or their time. So just get those terms out of the way. It's like, if you're not here with the terms, like, we're not interested in doing anything at all.
I love that. Yeah. And buyers appreciate that too, because
Right.
that's their question is like, what are you looking, what's an ideal outcome for you? And just being upfront from that, even if you just have like a PDF or just like a doc or just like bullet points, we're looking for this, and this. Here's my Calendly if you're interested, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that's important. The only thing that we sort of uh, took some time and we struggled with a little bit, just because of our, we're not experts at selling a business or acquiring a business and never have done it before. So, and I think you guys are actually working on some of this stuff right now, which is like having more resources in terms of like legal templates and things like that, because like just getting started with like a legal document to just start from was sort of hard, right? Because the buyer had never purchased a business before. We had never sold a business. Like, no one, where do we start here? Like, what's like
Yeah.
a legit, sort of starting point or template from a legal standpoint, and then we can get our lawyers involved after that.
I
But
think
that took some time.
I think you gave me that feedback. So now we have like templated
Mm-hmm.
resources. Do you want to hear our product roadmap just for fun?
Yeah.
Like, so in the next month, we're going to be releasing like a directory. So when you went to go sell Userfeed, you could have hired an attorney within microacquire. You could have hired a business broker at a small percentage or a fixed fee, like $5,000. Can you just handle all the negotiations and then bring me back the 3 most interested buyers? So those, I think you gave me that feedback. So thank you. If that was you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would be super helpful. I think that's where we got stuck the most, or kind of like what took the most time. Cause we kind of basically just said, we put the ball in the buyer's court and we were like, hey, you got to give us a legal doc. And he's like, well, I don't know. I mean, I've never done this before. So he was kind of figured it out on his own. And then once we got that started, that's when we sort of like brought our lawyers in, which we just used, we used somebody sort of like pro bono. So maybe that's not the best advice. You probably want to get a real, get a lawyer and pay the lawyer. But
Yeah.
I mean,
But it
but yeah,
worked.
it worked. It worked.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, for us, down the, like, if we ever do anything that's bigger, right? Like if we're getting into the millions, and if we were to sell the business we have now, it probably would be somewhere in the millions. So we probably we'd maybe focus a little bit, like get a lawyer from the start, pay a lawyer, potentially even get somebody else to help us, like some sort of advisor or something like that, just because it's such, like those are a little bit more, there's a little bit more on the line, and you don't want to screw it
Yeah.
up.
If you have a life-changing acquisition, and this is kind of like by the time this is released, the directory might even be out, but I fully agree. If you have a life-changing acquisition, especially in the millions, it really does go a long way hiring like a M&A advisor, investment bank, just to it brings insurance not just to you but also to the buyer.
Mhm.
It's the biggest signal to a buyer that you're serious and you're actually going to sell this business one way or another. So fully agree with you there. Final questions. Favorite color?
Black.
Really?
Is that a color? I don't know. Like, do they
That,
consider that one of the main?
oh, I mean, it's technically all colors
It's
combined.
it's on the. It's got to be on. What do they call it? The wavelength or whatever.
Yeah.
No, my daughter asked me that like at least 3 times a day, so
I
I've got
have
that one
this
prepared.
I have this like I slam my car door and like
There you go. There's some black.
everyone thinks I'm like a death metal fan now, and I'm
Right.
like, no. And I thought this would heal within like a week. Like it just like the
No, it
blood just
stays
go.
forever.
Yeah, thanks for letting me know. I had some people tell me that, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
Okay, last two questions. Favorite entrepreneur, and you can't say Elon Musk.
Um.
I stopped Elon Musk thing because people just kept. I love Elon.
Right. Yeah. That's hard. There's so many that I respect in different ways. Right. Um.
You can say
I'll,
yourself.
I'll give a couple shout outs to some people in my town. One is Taupe from Calendly, who's a good friend of mine.
Oh my gosh, that's that company.
He's killed it
That's up there with my top five.
totally. And another one that I respect for completely different reasons is Kyle Porter, which I think I saw you had him on one of your podcasts.
Yeah, I know.
But
Kyle.
he's just a
We
he's
were
a
one of,
machine, man.
yeah, we were one of their first customers back in the day. We did like a case study. But
Nice.
dude, Sales Loft back in the day. Oh my gosh, you'd load that up with like 500 emails. The response rate would be like 80%.
Yeah. Yeah. We so funny story here. Little tangent. But so
I love I love
Kyle, my co-founder Kyle and I, we used to work together at a company called Rigor, which was owned by so David Cummings is the guy that sort of like,
yeah, Pardot.
he's like the starter of, like, he started like Pardot, Sales, technically Sales Loft,
Very
Rigor.
familiar.
He's the first investor in Calendly. Like, you name the company in Terminus.
He's he's a gangster.
Yeah. So we all started in this one room. So it was like Rigor with like 3 employees, and then Sales Loft had 2 employees at the time. It was just Kyle and well, he had 3, so he had the 2 engineers. He would just come sit in our room like I was a sales rep at Rigor, and he would sit in there and he would just be like, all right, show me all the things you do, and I just want to like find the gaps in this process. And I was like, man, I got to go look up every single email in these, in Salesforce's like lead tool or whatever. I got to look up their emails. Like, if I could give you a bunch of LinkedIn accounts, you could just like spit out emails, like life changing. And so that's when
I remember that product.
Yeah,
It was
Prospector.
Yeah, and then they shut it down. I was like, Kyle, no. Kyle is such a wonderful human being.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite founders for sure.
Yeah. So it was we're all stuck in a room in those days, and they were built. We got to see it kind of firsthand, which is pretty cool.
You could have handed out 5K checks and been a billionaire, man.
I know. What was I doing? I know. Topa, I remember the day Topa was like, hey, you can invest in Calendly. It'll be the best investment you ever made. It was I don't know how, like, if he was half serious or whatever, but at the time they only had like, I want to say it was like 2 or 3 employees. So it was pretty early.
I'll make you feel better. So my business apps, we only raised $100,000. And I talk about this guy all the time because he was like my mentor. He's like one of my good friends. His name's Christian Friedland. He started a company called build.com.
Yeah.
Basically Home Depot online. If you buy a toilet, you probably buy it there.
They were one of our customers at Rigor back in the day.
Oh, really? Right on. Basically, the third engineer at Instagram was from Chico. That's where Build.com is based.
Yep.
And I've seen an email from Kevin Systrom saying like, "Hey, we're raising a seed round. Christian, do you have any interest in investing?" And then he's shown it to me a few times, and I'm like, "You need to delete that." Like, so I mean, you know, if you're in tech long enough, you just come across stuff like that. So that's awesome.
Totally.
All right. Final question: favorite book, or a book you're reading right now, or a book you hate? Or no, not a book you hate.
I mean, 0 to 1 is great. I'm sure you get a lot of people that say that, but I think I'll go with that one for now.
That is kind of like a mandatory.
Yeah, you got to read it. I can't think anything off the top of my head that's new that nobody would suggest.
I would recommend Play Bigger. Tuned In is solid.
Oh, nice.
Play Bigger is like cool for like brand building and like marketing. If you're into that, I don't know. I read a lot.
I need to get audiobooks because reading is a challenge at the moment with all these kids. It's like, you just don't have time.
I feel bad for giving you book recommendations after you just had a kid.
It's been a while since I read a book. I can get a little podcast in on like 2x speed, like while I'm feeding the baby at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And get one in there, but when I'm running or something.
I've lived that life, man. Like, but congrats, man. Like,
yeah. Well, congrats to you guys. You guys are doing awesome things. And, I know it gives, like Kyle and I talk about it all the time on our podcast, Made with Grit. Just throw it in there.
Grit, tons of grit. That's all you need.
With grit. Yeah, we talk about it all the time. It's super, like we bootstrapped our businesses and, kind of plan to do the same in the future. It just makes it, for us, it really de-risk that whole process. Because we know even if we don't have like a huge winner, like we can still get something out of it, at least from a financial standpoint. Yeah, at the end, if we decide to sell it, and that changes the game.
$1 profit is better than 100 million in seed funding, in my opinion. So
yeah,
you're kicking ass, Landon. All right, I'll let you run, bud. But thanks so much for joining me on this podcast. If people want to get a hold of you, learn more about your new company, where should they reach out?
Our company is adreform.com. So just AD-reform. And then my Twitter handle is at LandonB32. And if you want to check out the podcast we do, which is kind of similar, like Bootstrapper podcast, it's madewithgrit.fm. And we're gonna have you on soon. So
I'll join whenever, man.
Yeah, dude.
I think we'll coordinate, and I'll put all the things you mentioned down in the show notes. But dude, thanks so much for coming on this. Great meeting you, and shit, man, congrats on all your success.
Appreciate it. You too. Thanks for having us on.
Of course.